Welcome to a special edition of The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with our house DJ Tolliver. And Tolliver, there is a lot going on right now on a holiday of all days. President Trump is now President Trump again. He's not former President Trump. He's not President-elect Trump.
You know, and who doesn't love a sequel? And you know, and this time we're going to Mars. Did you hear that?
Well, that's what Elon Musk says. I think there are a lot of people that we're probably going to hear from who don't love a sequel, but you know, we've seen executive orders already signed, removing the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord, directing federal workers to work in the office rather than remote. And of course, then there's the issue of tariffs. And Trump is saying today that he wants to put 25% tariffs on everything coming in from Mexico and Canada starting next week. So, like I said, a lot going on. In his inaugural address, Trump said he was saved from that July assassination attempt, quote, by God, to make America great again.
That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day.
So whether you feel that way or not, we want to hear from you this hour about your hopes and fears as Trump retakes the presidency. What does it mean for you? What does it mean for the country? Tolliver, can you give us the number, please?
Yeah, it's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com. And TikTok's still here for now, so we're still streaming on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok.
And now Instagram and Facebook, too. We just keep adding them more and more until they go away, like MySpace, and then we'll have to find the new ones. Yeah. Anyways, let's bring in our panel. USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey joins us from Louisville, Kentucky. Phillip, great to have you back.
Hey, Jeremy, how are you?
Doing well. And from Kansas City, Mary Sanchez, reporter and columnist for the Tribune content agency. Mary, welcome back to you as well.
Thank you.
Well, before we get to the phones, Phillip, with every change in the White House, every 4 years or every 8 years comes big changes for the country. There are some people who are not happy and some people who are ecstatic. Is this one different?
Well, it is in this way. Look, President Donald Trump is returning to office here, Jeremy, capping off one of the most extraordinary political comebacks in history, returning as the 47th president, more popular and more powerful than before. Just a mere 4 years after leaving Washington in defeat, and what some would say in disgrace, quite honestly. USA Today, Suffolk University did a poll recently that found that more Americans are less troubled by Trump's return than his initial arrival. About 31% in our poll said they felt excited about him taking office, equal to about 31% of respondents who said they felt afraid. Now, we asked that same question in December of 2016, and that found only 16% felt excited versus 38% who are alarmed. I think this victory and the way that President Trump won, sweeping all the swing states, winning the popular vote, albeit by 1.5%, and gaining a more diverse coalition. I think this is a different victory, and therefore I think there's a different response that even the opposition is having to President Trump.
Mary, what do you think? You are in a very purple part of the country in Kansas City. You've got a Democratic governor in Kansas and a Republican, very Republican state in Missouri these days. How is it playing out there? What are people feeling?
You know, I think it's like anything. It depends on who you're speaking with, who your friends are. I think some people are absolutely mortified that he is back in office again. I know immigrant, particularly Latino communities, are very on edge, fearful. Some of that, I think, has been, frankly, reporting that has driven up that anxiety. We're still finding out what's going to happen. We're going to have to wait and see. Missouri is a very red state. It used to be a bellwether, and it is no longer. So I think there are lots of people here who vote Republican and have always voted Republican very strongly. They feel very right, but some of, to the right, but on a lot of issues that we would normally used to call cultural issues, gay and lesbian, transgender, which was mentioned today. There's all of that. But some of the things that President Trump is speaking about now is this tariffs. This is agricultural land. We have a Ford assembly plant here. All of those things could come into play very quickly in ways that some of his supporters may not find pleasurable.
Well, and Philip, just in the last few hours, we've seen Trump pardon 1,500 January 6th rioters. He would call them hostages, but they were convicted, and so he issued a pardon. And he has said this about the tariffs, threatened Canada and Mexico with tariffs. He's doing a lot of things very quickly, pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. What are the biggest changes that you're expecting in the hours and days ahead?
Well, look, I think some of this is going to be, Jeremy, some bluster a little bit. Let's all remember that. Let's remember the original before we move into the sequel. Donald Trump is really good at this one thing. He's really good at showmanship, right? So whenever he's backed into a political corner, the showmanship goes up. And I think that's one thing you'll see consistently here. For example, renaming the Gulf of Mexico. He's doing that officially, I guess, for the U.S. government, but there are international organizations that control that, right? Like, how many folks are just going to be calling it the Gulf of America? He does it. But there are some changes here that he's making that will be consequential. I think the January 6th rioters' pardons, will, particularly for someone like Enrique Tarrio, the founder and the leader of the Proud Boys, who was sentenced to 22 years in prison for seditious conspiracy. The question I have is, now that you all have this, what is going to be the buyer's remorse weeks, months from now, particularly from some of his supporters who may want him to go in a different direction? I'm particularly interested, Jeremy, in this ongoing or emerging beef within Trump's governing coalition of sort of the OG MAGA folks like Steve Bannon, Laura Loomer, and others, and sort of the new wave tech bros who sort of adopted Trump in these past years or so. There's already some conversations or some back and forth between them. So I think we're going to see, obviously, the usual reversal in these executive orders and changes. He has a very razor-thin majority in the House and, of course, a pretty solid majority in the Senate and the more conservative tilting Supreme Court. But, governing is a whole different ballgame than politicking. And we'll see how much Donald Trump has learned from his first go round. I think Susan Wiles, his chief of staff, is probably one of the most important additions to this new team. And I think I'm also watching Senator Marco Rubio, who was confirmed
confirmed out of the Senate committee as Secretary of State, right?
Yeah. So, some things he's learned, perhaps some things he may not have learned. There's still a lot of bombasticness to his nature. But this is a president who likes to cut a lot of deals as long as he looks good. So there might be some folks from his base and his governing coalition who will find out very quickly, as others have found out in his business life and personal life, Donald Trump will make a deal and sell you up the river pretty fast.
Let's go to the phones. Again, our number is 844-464-3353. It's 844-4-MIDDLE. Ashley is joining us from Houston. Ashley, welcome to the Middle. What are you thinking about today as Trump retakes the White House?
I honestly have never been a big fan of Trump. However, after his inauguration speech today, I was really impressed. So I am very optimistic about, just his new view. And I really think that I'm going to give him a chance this round.
What do you mean by that? What impressed you? What did you hear that you liked in the speech today?
I've never heard him talk about inclusivity. I've never heard him talk about uniting the country, about liberation and liberty. And I really think that's what we need today. And I think that he has kind of taken a different position than the stance he had in the past. And so I think ultimately he needs a second chance.
Let me ask you one more thing, Ashley. What would you say is the top issue for you as a voter in this country?
Okay. The top issue for me, honestly, he didn't touch on it, but it has to do with high-tech crime. It's something that's been going on in our country that people aren't talking about. We have a high-tech domestic terrorist network that's been operating in the United States, engaging in crimes, and government has been covering it up. They have labeled it Havana syndrome, when in fact the crime network has been operating here secretly, and government in Houston and the United States government has been covering it up. So it's something definitely they need to tackle.
You're the first person I've ever asked that question to who has given me that answer. But Ashley, thank you very much for calling. I appreciate it. And Mary Sanchez, this is the thing, is 5 people could listen to a Trump speech and hear 5 different things, but Ashley heard unity there today.
Absolutely. And I think probably the portion that she's speaking to was when he was reading remarks. And that was a much more toned down Trump. There were certain messages that were there, but he was reading from the teleprompter. Later, he kind of deviated and became more of what some people would call more of the problematic Donald Trump. There were also, though, things that he said, even in that first speech, that for those of us who have worked around communities of color, who my father is an immigrant from Mexico City, it's kind of red flag verbiage. He was talking about a country being colorblind. No one is colorblind. That's like one of these crazy myths that people don't notice color, that we don't notice differences. Of course we do. It's human nature. So that's just kind of one of those verbal cues. And here we are on Martin Luther King Jr.'s day. And to hear that,
Yeah.
Is a little disturbing.
Yeah. Again, our number 844-464-3353. Tolliver, there were some pretty big names on the Democratic side who did not attend the inauguration, including Nancy Pelosi and Michelle Obama.
Yeah, but many Democrats did. Here's Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, my former senator, speaking with Trump sitting right behind her.
Our theme this year is our enduring democracy. The presence of so many presidents and vice presidents here today is truly a testament to that endurance. This ceremony marks what will soon be 250 years of our democracy. It is the moment when leaders, elevated by the will of the people, promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish and defend it.
Not sure if she was needling Trump when she noted the presence of former presidents, because, of course, he didn't show up to Biden's inauguration 4 years ago. A reminder, The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. And Tolliver, what do we have here?
This is George Clinton with Double O, a song that proves that George Clinton is patriotic even when he's singing about babes. More of your calls coming up on The Middle.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we want to hear your thoughts as a new Trump era begins in America. Tolliver, what is the number of people to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on social media.
I'm joined by Tribune content agency reporter and columnist Mary Sanchez and USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey. And the phones are lighting up. But before we go back to them, Phillip, what about the role of billionaires? Today at the inauguration, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, who, by the way, are worth collectively about $1 trillion. What are the concerns about the richest people in the world having such access, unprecedented access to the president?
Well, a feature, I think, of this second Trump administration will be that Trump has not just consolidated his dominance in the Republican Party and had a full takeover there, but he's also bringing former foes and critics to heel. And as you mentioned, the tech bros who, Donald Trump certainly had a very tense relationship in his first term, and many in his coalition did, accusing them of being part of covering up different or at least suppressing information on certain news stories like the Hunter Biden laptop and other issues, now are completely on board with him. I think this is what Democrats would rather have the conversation about. I think they would love the image or have already begun to use the image of, see, now the billionaires are in control. It was President Biden, former President Biden now, in his outgoing farewell speech, who mentioned the oligarchy embedding itself into our democracy. But, this is something Democrats were reluctant to dive into really in their convention, because guess what? They had billionaires on their own roster, like the governor of Illinois, or like honoring George Soros. So look, as Democrats try to find themselves and rebrand themselves, I think they'll certainly take the relationship, particularly the relationship with Musk, who I think went from an eccentric character to a more alarming character today with that sort of Nazi salute that he did at the Capital One arena. So these more eccentric billionaires and their behaviors and decision-making, I think you'll see Democrats accentuate those. They were already beginning to call Elon Musk the co-president.
Well, and Mary, the interesting thing here is that Trump is surrounding himself with these billionaires, and yet so much of his message has been about helping the little guy when it comes to either bringing down prices or bringing jobs back and things like that.
I think that's the danger of this. It almost goes twofold. I mean, if you study class in America, we tend to have these huge myths about Horatio Alger myths, but most people don't leave the class level that they were born into. And people now who are really struggling know that inherently, even as much as they aspire and work really hard. So there's some danger there if he gets crosswise with people who are really struggling at the same time when he looks like he's being buddy-buddy with people who are extremely wealthy at levels that the average person cannot even fathom. There's some real danger of a disconnect there with these people who actually did vote for him.
Let's get back to the phones, and Jonathan is in Kansas City. Jonathan, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm in Kansas City, Kansas, actually, just to make that clear to the people at home.
Okay.
My feelings in the election are honestly shame. Like, I'm 22. I voted in 2016 against Trump. I had very strong feelings then that have not been tamped down at all. In 2016, we kind of, we didn't know what we were dealing with, to borrow a phrase. We kind of, he was a new up-and-coming, wasn't a career politician. But after seeing his absolute mismanagement of the pandemic, among other issues, his transactional relationship with autocrats and whatever, we rightfully elected someone else, and then we did it again. And he still doesn't understand tariffs is the scariest part, too. Because he says, I'm going to fix the economy. These other countries are paying the tariffs. That's not how tariffs work, and that concerns me.
Is that the biggest concern for you right now, Jonathan? Of all the things that he is going to do as he gets going as president again, is the tariffs are number one for you, would you say?
I wouldn't say that. It's more of climate change is a huge thing because, he pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords, and that really is problematic. The tariffs, that's more of an argument of he doesn't understand what he's doing. But the fact that he's pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords, these very important, for my future and my children's future, if I ever have children, that's the biggest important part. And that's what's concerning for me is he doesn't understand the complexity of these issues. And I don't know, it's just, I'm ashamed and concerned for the future.
Jonathan, thank you. And thank you for telling us it's Kansas City, Kansas, not Kansas City, Missouri for you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Phillip Bailey, a couple of things there, but let's talk about the climate aspect because he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. He got rid of mandates involving electric cars today. He's saying drill, baby, drill. And yet he's working with Elon Musk so much, who definitely does believe in climate change. And is the electric car man with Tesla. So what do you think about that and what he's doing with climate change?
I think we all are going to have to learn to adapt to President Trump. I think if we're looking for consistency in the things that President Trump says or he does, there isn't a governing philosophy like Reaganism or Clintonian triangulation, or even when President Obama was in office, right? There's no sort of guiding principle to President Trump's philosophy other than Donald Trump and how he feels in the moment, who makes him feel good about the situation and whatever deal he makes, whoever he's talking to at that moment. So he'll say things like, we're going to get rid of these electric cars. And then he's working with someone who's in great amount of their business model is based on electric cars, right? Like these contradictions that I think we in the press and his opposition have tried to call people's attention to, the American public has largely said, we don't care. We just want to see some results. And I point this out, Jeremy, because when I was talking to different Democrats and left-leaning organizations, including Our Revolution, the largest grassroots political progressive action group in the country, they shared some internal tracking polling with me with their membership. And they found, Jeremy, that 63% of their membership want to, quote, support initiatives of common ground with the Department of Government Efficiency, right? On things like cutting wasteful spending in the Pentagon versus 37% who say they should always oppose Trump no matter what. So those diehard Democrats who can't stand Trump from 2016, they are completely startled at this country's decision. But there is a portion, I think, of Democrats and others who are like, he's president again, let's make a deal. And they're not really looking for consistency. They know who Donald Trump is. He's been in our politics now for about 10 years. They know he's full of contradictions. They know he says these rather wild, ridiculous things. But whoever gets access to him and in the room with him, they can make a deal with him, they'll certainly take advantage.
Right. People can have influence, certainly, with Donald Trump. Let's go to Abraham, who's in Chicago. Abraham, what do you think as we enter a new era of Trump in America?
Yeah, how's it going? Actually pretty excited about the economy. As a Palestinian American and as my truck driver that does domestic intermodal loads, they come straight from 20 to 40-foot containers. Excited about the economy and excited on the new foreign policy that he's going to approach this upcoming year.
The new foreign policy meaning what? What are you excited about when it comes to foreign policy?
Foreign policy, we all know with the 2020 Abraham Accords that occurred, from the events that this past 4 years, there wasn't any really movement going on with that. With Gaza and Israel, with Syria, with Bashar, with Hezbollah getting pushed to the north. It's going to be very interesting to see the approach with the new Secretary of State as well, with Marco Rubio, and how they're going to deal with Netanyahu's government and to bring the broader peace to the region. Because he did say today that he's a peacemaker. So let's see what he's talking about.
Let me ask you one more thing, Abraham. When you talk about the economy, are you excited about the idea of tariffs?
Yes, I am excited. I think it's going to persuade other countries to want to do business with the U.S., and it's going to improve the domestic supply of goods coming out of the country, going to different countries. So I think it is going to be better, in my opinion.
Okay. Abraham, thank you very much for that. Mary Sanchez, on the issue of peace there, and there are a lot of people who believe this, just Trump coming in means there's going to be a different foreign policy, and maybe some of these conflicts that have been going on for a very long time. I mean, we just saw the ceasefire, which was worked out with, I guess, people from both the Biden administration and now the Trump administration, but the ceasefire in the Middle East, maybe there'll be some movement on the war in Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera.
I think we're all holding our breath on that. Certainly everyone wanted to see, well, I should say everyone, many people were very happy to see hostages released and to see people be able to walk out after October 7th. At the same time, I mean, I covered a lot of the turmoil on universities, particularly younger people are really watching the Middle East. And we've already heard some fears of, they want peace. They want a peaceful country. No one is wanting us to enter into a war, but yet young people in particular are very, very focused and conscious on things going on around the globe. And they will be looking for the president and this new administration to really play a strong role in keeping peace. And sometimes that peace through force and everything, who Trump allows in his circle, I don't know that they're going to always feel positive about where he's going with that.
Let's go to Bianca, who is in Aurora, Colorado. Bianca, what do you think about Trump's new term in the White House?
I really believe that he's going to make a lot of positive changes, and I'm really looking forward to whatever he does. And the only thing I'm concerned about is this whole renaming of the Panama Canal. I really think there should be more dialogue about it. But other than that, I think that he has some great ideas.
All right. Great. Actually, I'm glad you brought up the Panama Canal because Phillip Bailey, Greenland, he wants to take Greenland. He wants to retake the Panama Canal. He wants to make Canada the 51st state. You can't really tell what he's being serious about with this and what is just he's throwing it out there to see what happens. But are you expecting movement on those things?
No. I mean, remember, the wall was supposed to be paid for by Mexico. I mean, Donald Trump's style, if anyone has watched The Apprentice, that biopic of Donald Trump and sees where he got his sort of mentorship from, you're always in attack mode. You're always pitching. You're always throwing things out there to see what sticks. Some of this might go somewhere. The thing with Greenland might turn into sharing of some sort of resources. It may not be the United States buying Greenland, right? There may be a whole deal struck with Canada. They might come, Trudeau's out now. There's a whole new government coming in Canada. They may want to make a deal with Donald Trump, say, hey, you know what, Mr. President, we know you're not going to make us a 51st state, but here's something we can work on. And I think that is where, look, Donald Trump is already a lame duck now. And the political timing hasn't changed. The calendar is the same as it has always been. There are midterms coming up. And really after that, he turns even to more of a lame duck. And he wants a legacy. This is a president you can tell who is yearning and searching for to get his face, etched in Mount Rushmore somewhere.
He wants his Louisiana Purchase.
Right. The sort of new manifest destiny sort of he's trying to adopt here. He wants to write his name in the history books in some sort of grand way here. And the question will be how much of his governing coalition will remain to include Republicans, because on some of these issues, he may go to Democrats in the House. He may go to Democrats in the Senate. Remember, Donald Trump spent most of his life as a liberal Democrat in New York. So I think that we're going to see here not really a guiding, consistent political philosophy. It's going to be come as it goes, see what it is. In some ways, I'll be dealing with John Fetterman. Some days I'll be dealing with Speaker Mike Pence. And other days I might be actually dealing with maybe Hakeem Jeffries. I think that's what the American people have got to get used to when it comes to Donald Trump. There is no consistency here.
Bree is joining us from Westchester, Pennsylvania. Bree, what do you think about the new Trump term?
Well, I'm personally a little worried for the upcoming policy, and I was reading some of the executive orders that President Trump has signed today, and one of them was redefining sex under U.S. law, and I'm just worried for those who do consider themselves transgender, both adults and minors, what that would entail for the next 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. And he actually brought up in the inaugural speech, Mary Sanchez, the idea that from now on, he says, the U.S. will only have two genders, man and woman. Which, there is a sizable trans portion of, population in this country who would say that's not, that doesn't make sense. Or people who don't consider them, who are gender fluid, who don't consider themselves one or the other. So what about that and Bree's concerns?
Well, and that's part of where Donald Trump and the rhetoric does run up against facts and scientific facts. I mean, gender dysphoria is real. Doctors have known that for decades now. It's been recognized, and this is, transgender. I think he could possibly be in a dangerous land by going too far. A lot of what he speaks to, particularly on these, pulpit podiums, is to his very strong base. That is what today was about. He is the president of the United States, however, and he must govern for everyone. And if he leans too far into some of those issues just to please a certain voice or frankly to get the cheers from his supporters, he does risk losing other people that possibly might be open to him.
Well, that's a really interesting point. And Phillip, I remember when we had you on last and we were talking about whether he won the middle. And I think you said, yes, he did, at least some degree this time. What is the calculation from a president about whether to just appeal to their base versus to appeal to the broader electorate?
Well, I think, you need your base because that is what gives up any president their political might, particularly like in midterms or the bully pulpit, essentially, right? The president of the United States could enter a room and immediately take all the oxygen out of it when they're in a popular position or place. And I think if there's anyone to ask how important that is, ask Joe Biden, who in his exit interview said, I was really good at the policy part. The politics, not so much. I mean, today we saw Trump signing these executive orders at the rally and showing everyone, see what I've done, look what I've done.
Right.
Because I think Trump understands that your average American isn't reading scientific journals about body dysmorphia, right? They're not reading these deep essays about critical race theory or our country's racial history. He understands that your average American cares far more about what the cost of milk is, what they see in their phones or on TikTok and everything else. So he's been able to, I think, exploit that in a way that Democrats sort of lost the point and lost the plot here about what government's all about to people. Get things done. The question for
Phil,
Trump.
just stand by for a second, because Tolliver, a lot of the fear that we're hearing about Trump's return to the White House was because of things he said himself.
Yeah, like when he said he wanted to be a dictator on day one, which is today. Here he is during a town hall with Fox News anchor Sean Hannity back in 2023.
Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight, you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's not retribution. I'm gonna be, you know, he keeps, we love this guy. He says, you're not gonna be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
This is
today,
retribution
day
against
one.
polar bears. Yeah.
Tolliver, what is this?
This is Aretha Franklin, where the change is going to come. Today is MLK Day. He and Aretha were super close. MLK gave a few good speeches of his own. I wonder what he would think of today's presidential address. More of your calls coming up on The Middle.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. This hour, we're asking you for your thoughts on Trump's return to the White House and what that means for America and for you. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out at listentothemiddle.com, or Tolliver, you can find us on which platforms again, live streaming
Every
now?
single platform.
All of them.
YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat.
No,
Who
not
knows?
Snapchat, but Twitch, which whatever that is. No, I'm kidding. I kind of now know what Twitch is. I am joined by USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey and Tribune content agency reporter and columnist Mary Sanchez. And before we go back to the phones, Mary, what will the opposition do this time around? You aren't seeing the big protests, as much resistance as we saw back in 2017, at least not yet. What kind of opposition are you expecting this time?
I know it's already happening. I mean, we've done some interviews where people are doing their homework. You know, they're waiting to see what's occurring, you know, what he's going to sign in executive order, certainly today. But they're looking at building coalitions, I think. I think you may not see, you know, outpourings like Black Lives Matter, but there are a lot of people who know how to do grassroots organizing. I think if they're going to be successful, they need to kind of start reaching out broader and broader. And some of them know that. I mean, you know, the ACLU is probably being funded right now at very high levels. Matter of fact, some good reporter probably needs to check that because they are one of the organizations that will be challenging many of the things that Trump is going to try and do, particularly around immigration. So I think, you know, people are planning, they're working, they're not just sitting back.
Phillip, is there somebody who's going to emerge or is starting to emerge as sort of the face of the opposition in Washington?
Well, look, I've been covering some of the early stages of this RNC chair race, and I think that's the first place you're going to see
DNC chair race.
DNC chair race. And you have different candidates, you know, Ken Martin of Minnesota, Ben Wickler of Wisconsin, certainly can't forget former governor of Maryland, Martin O'Malley, and others who are in that contest. So I think that's going to be the first test. But Mary's right. I mean, you're going to see legal challenges. You're going to see folks reconfigure. I do think, again, Jeremy, that parts of the left are going to have a two-pronged approach here. There's obviously going to be on the values that are very important to progressives, like protecting the undocumented community, protecting the trans community, that they're not going to waver on. But I do think you're going to see some Democrats, and it might be some surprising figures, who are going to broach Donald Trump on some things of, hey, let's get something done, because they know that their constituents really are wanting people to be served in a way by government. So look, Democrats aren't really sure how exactly uniformly they're going to approach Donald Trump. I think the activist left obviously is going to try to reconfigure things, but I'm very interested to see, particularly some of these court challenges like the birthright citizenship, who the ACLU and others who go to before the Supreme Court, who they aim their arguments at. Is it going to be Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, depending on which case it is? The Supreme Court will play a vital role here over the next 4 years.
Let's go to Bobby, who's in Echo Park, California. Bobby, what do you think about this new Trump era in America?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm excited. I'm Obama, Hillary, Biden voter who now voted for Trump. and am, for lack of a better term, like a coastal elite, you know, educated, lived in Brooklyn, live in LA now, and I'm just, I think there's a lot of me, you know, I'm someone who's just increasingly pushed away from the Democratic Party. For lack of a better term, I think the speaker just used the term activist left. And yeah, the lack of common sense, the condemnation of anyone who disagrees with you, you know, calling people transphobic for, you know, whatever it is, thinking men shouldn't compete against women in powerlifting competitions or whatever. I'm excited and cautiously hopeful that it might lead the Democrats to maybe look in the mirror. I haven't seen it yet. I'm not seeing it. So I'm, like I said, cautiously optimistic. It seems like they're just going to double down on labeling everyone, you know, who disagrees or who defected as capital B bad. So, but yeah, I'm excited. It seems like Trump, as wild as he is, and it just seems like a return to common sense, as wild as that is to say, and as unlikely as I would have thought it would be for me to say that in 2016, for example, when he first got elected.
Yeah. Bobby, thanks. Great to have you on the show. And Mary, Biden, Obama, Hillary, Trump voter. Interesting.
Yeah, that's I actually wrote that down as he was speaking, because that is interesting. You know, and you would have to spend more time with someone to really kind of unthread that and figure out what exactly was going on within his life at those different portions that he went that way. I think a lot of people do vote just for change, and Trump was a change from Biden. You know, you hear people talk about, is that the woke conversations, and they're pushing back. Part of that, I think, is our inability to have these real conversations. The transgender population is relatively very small. I fought this in newsrooms even. You know, you don't want to start building narratives that a population, although very deserving of protections, I personally think. But I think if you ask people, they'll think that that our transgender population in the U.S. is much larger than it actually is.
Right.
As
It gets
that
talked about all the time.
conversation
I mean, it was a huge
it
issue
overtook
in the campaign. Right.
Absolutely. And that there's a part of that where Democrats really failed. They failed to do some of that educating. Most school districts, public school districts, have dealt with that issue of athletics when a child is, you know, in transition. They've dealt with that for decades.
But Jeremy,
And
also,
no one ever brought it up. And it suddenly just became this huge issue, and it overtook things. But end of the day, does that help your caller in their living, in their cost of living, in their wages?
Right.
No, it has nothing to do with it.
But Jeremy, I think that caller there said what I heard from a lot of people on the campaign trail, a lot of Democrats or disaffected folks who were left of center in a lot of their values. And one of them said to me, look, if I say that an illegal immigrant killed a young girl in Georgia, right, Democrats are more upset with me because I said illegal immigrant than the fact that the girl was killed. And I think this is where Democrats, I guess, forgot the plot, and the woke stuff, sort of why it was so easy for Republicans to use against them, is that people are asking to be served. A lot of Americans are very clumsy in their rhetoric. They don't know the right thing to say. They might say something that might be kind of tiny offensive to you if you have all your checks marked off. But so what? That's not the point. The federal government's job isn't to regulate how you talk about the issues. That's not the president's job. That's not the speaker's job, the chief justice's job. Your job is to serve the people. So some folks are going to come to you and say some really clumsy, ugly, maybe even bigoted things from time to time. And Democrats focused far more on that. And I think Trump was able to seize on that in a way that Democrats really didn't think that they would.
Phillip, correct me if I'm wrong. Can I jump in real quick? Yeah, I just don't know if I've heard that at the federal level with Democrats, especially on the transgender issues. Am I missing somebody who's been talking about this more than I think? Like Democrats engaging with the transgender issue?
Certainly, I don't think, Tolliver, at the federal level, the outrage merits sort of the response at the federal level. But I do think what Republicans are just better at than Democrats is they're able to speak to common people who don't pay attention to politics every day and give them that 15-second pitch on why I care about it more than they do. Because I'm responding to the thing that gets people viscerally angry and upset. People are upset when someone is killed regardless of their nationality and background. But yes, if an illegal immigrant or an undocumented person comes to this country and does that, people get more upset apparently. And rather than focusing on the rhetoric of how people talk about the issue, Republicans are trying to respond, I think, to why are you upset about the issue? And Democrats, more than likely, I think, in this year, are going to pivot back to that.
Let's go to Chester, who's in Denver, Colorado. Hi, Chester. Welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you. It's funny you picked up my call, as I'm actually a trans person. And one of the biggest concerns that I do have is over the Trump presidency. Just like the legality of having just two genders that are assigned at birth. I worry so much about the people in my community, but not only my community, people of color, immigrants, people in Palestine, as we're really in this place right now where there's a ceasefire deal happening, but several people have been killed already today. And it's just so upsetting to know that Trump wants to make have all hell break loose in the Middle East.
Well, Chester, let me just ask you, focused on the transgender issue and your community.
Yeah.
What would you want if somebody in the Trump administration was listening to this right now? What would you say to them about that issue? That if you had their ear for a moment.
Of course. So my father is a Trump supporter and has voted for him every time he has run. It's something that is very difficult for me because I know that he loves me as his child. I think just listening to trans voices and knowing that they're people rather than the things that people really struggle with, like pronouns and gender markers. Beyond that, we are people, and I think that I understand the Republicans and right-leaning people that they struggle with these things, but we've always been around, and regardless of it being legal or not, we will continue to be around. But it is scary to know that this administration is so hostile towards my community.
Yeah, Chester, thank you so much for calling in. Mary Sanchez, just amazing. And Tolliver, by the way, amazing that, the callers that we get on this program. But Mary Sanchez, to hear that from somebody who really feels targeted directly, who feels that their own life is really on the line here with Trump coming back in. And there are probably many people in different groups that feel that way as Trump comes back into the White House.
Yeah, there are. I mean, I know there are. And that's part of the challenge for the nation, I think, and for Democrats, is how do you allow those voices to be heard and the questions to be asked, perhaps? We just don't have the, quote, safe spaces for people to be, as Phillip was saying, clumsy with language. Most people who are born straight, as you are born to what you are, they've never thought about it. Matter of fact, that's one way that you kind of train people, is ask them, how long have you known that you were straight? And they'll say, I've always known. And that's one way to get people to understand that other people don't feel that way. Right. And it's different.
Right.
But those conversations aren't had. Chester needs to be heard. And maybe in a place where questions can be asked so people can learn. So that it peels away that fear. And frankly, it peels away at what Trump is very good at and that is very dangerous. And that's dehumanizing people, calling people labels and names, because you never know when maybe it's a big donor, a big GOP donor, and then their child is who you're speaking of.
Right. Let's go to the phones again. And Chris is in Dallas, Texas. Chris, welcome to the middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hey, yeah. I just wanted to call in and talk about, the new energy prospects that they're bringing in and some of the new possibilities coming up, and looking forward to bridge the gap. And then on the topic that you're just talking of, I worry that, they talked about those safe spaces, that there really are a lot of places that people have been so conflicted, and there's been so much angst on all sides that I fear that maybe now that we've gotten past this point, we can find the middle, find the point of people being able to talk and just having the adult conversations about what needs to be done moving forward.
Yeah. What about the issue of energy excites you, by the way, when it comes to Trump?
Mm-hmm. So obviously, I do like the idea of the drill, baby drill, for the idea of utilizing the resources to get to a more efficient solution long term. A lot of things that they've looked at right now for power and solar, they're getting there, but the scale that they've been doing it hasn't been as efficient as it could be. There's a lot of new nuclear technologies that can provide the energy that we're going to need. Definitely in the short term, a lot better than some of the solar and wind that we're looking at, even some of the battery technologies. That's something that hasn't been really looked at, and there's just the options that we can get to. I felt that we were too hamstrung just by trying to do something for the sake of doing what we think might be right, rather than looking at really what is the best options all around and getting those moving forward.
Yeah. Chris, thank you for that call. Phillip Bailey, we should note that even in the Biden administration, the U.S. is producing more energy than ever before, including from things like natural gas. What is Trump exactly going to be able to do now quickly on the issue of energy and drill, baby, drill?
Well, look, if there's any issue that requires long-term thinking and investment, I think it's the energy issue. And Doug Burgum, the former governor of North Dakota, who is now in the administration, is I think one of the smartest men I've encountered when it comes to talking about this issue. But again, it goes back to like what you said. People don't really know what the Biden administration, a lot of times, the policies that they were already working on that was already benefiting the country, right? And now that Donald Trump's, like, for example, Republicans really like the election results and have a whole lot of faith in the election results now that Donald Trump won.
Right.
Many think that probably wouldn't have happened if Kamala Harris had probably won on November. I know I had all kinds of gas mask and gear prepared for a different election night. But anyway, so look. This is, I think, the key difference between Biden and Trump. One is a showman. One is always selling, always in the mode of telling you what he's doing great, what he's doing big, even if nothing's actually happening. Whereas in Biden has admitted he didn't do that well at that part. He didn't have surrogates out there selling the ideas and his accomplishments. So look, when I think whether it comes to energy or the trans issue, the question for people when engaging Donald Trump is, what can I get out of this, right? For the folks who don't want to deal with him at all because they've written him off as a bigot or whatever else, I understand they're never going to deal with him. But for those who are going to engage with this president, what I'm looking for is, where does Donald Trump want his legacy to be at? Which constituencies is he willing to lean into and really be favorable with? How's he going to referee this emerging fight between Elon Musk and Steve Bannon? Which side is he going to pick? He's known to do that from time to time, folks. Pick one side 1 minute and be on the other side the next. So I think, again, here, when it comes to energy, I think that's a very dense subject and conversation that's really going to be negotiated in Congress. But I don't think you're going to see gas prices go to $1.10 anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. And Mary Sanchez, I'll just give you the last word. We just have about 30 seconds here. But one of the first things we're going to be talking about in the next few days, including on our show this week, is immigration, the deportations that will begin soon. What are your thoughts as we get ready to start focusing on that?
I think that's where you're going to really start seeing the courts play in. A lot of what he's talking about, the 14th Amendment, the birthright citizenship, that's already gone through the courts, all the way up and through the U.S. Supreme Court. There's just a logistical issue that it would be very hard to really do what he claims he's going to do. I think a lot of people don't understand immigration, though. We deport people every single day. I mean, deport, it's really removals. We don't deport. But the average person doesn't know that. I think he may claim victory, claim something that people just don't know happens all the time anyway.
Right. That is Mary Sanchez, who is a Tribune content agency reporter and columnist. And we've also been speaking with USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey. Thanks so much to both of you, and we'd love to have you back soon.
See you soon, Jeremy.
Thank you.
And later this week, as I said, we'll be live from the studios of WNIN in Evansville, Indiana, to discuss one of the biggest promises of Trump's, which would be the deportations. We're going to be joined by Gorinda Carr, who's the CEO of the Immigrant Welcome Center in Indianapolis, and the new Republican Lieutenant Governor there, Micah Beckwith.
As always, you can call in at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com, where you can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter. And don't forget to check out our new video podcast on YouTube, where you can watch us as well as hear us.
The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Burmistad, John Barth, Annika Deschler, and Brandon Kondritz. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Thanks to all of them for working on this holiday. And thanks to our satellite radio listeners, our podcast audience, and the more than 420 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I'll talk to you later this week.